chemists around Australia, they want these emergency powers, the powers that they've had during the recent bushfire crisis and as a result of this virus, to stay and become permanent in relation to issuing repeat scripts. Now, under legislation introduced in the wake of these two disasters, pharmacists have been legally allowed to roll over a script for regular medications without a patient having an immediately current prescription. Now, for anyone who gets scripts filled often enough, that's a godsend. But GPs, well, they don't like the extension of powers to pharmacists. They certainly don't want it to be permanent. George Tambassis is the National President of the Pharmacy Guild of Australia. He joins me now in Melbourne. Let's just see, George, if I got all of that right, but just explain to me how the emergency powers work in practice for someone who visits a pharmacy, and what's your argument for the extension?
You got it spot on, Peter. So first of all, we want to applaud all the state and territory governments to allowing us to do that since the start of the year, as you explained, and also the Morrison government for allowing this instrument to be based on PBS pricing. So not only can we continue to dispense 1 month's supply for these medicines for patients, as you rightfully said, that can't get themselves to see a doctor and can't get that prescription, we can also price it at the PBS price, so there's no out-of-pocket costs. In practice, the way it works, and certainly the few and sparingly few times that I've used it in my pharmacies, in practice how it works is a patient walks into our pharmacy and is basically in some sort of crisis mode themselves. They're distraught, they're under some sort of stress because they've just realised that they can't get an appointment to go and see the doctor, or they can't even contact their doctor, and they've run out of their diabetes medication or blood pressure medication that they've been stable on for more than 12 months. So the protocols are really strict if we have to use this particular instrument. And we basically dispense that 1 month pack. We make sure we contact the doctor when we can find the doctor. And at the grassroots level, certainly at the front line when pharmacies are using the instrument, and I personally end up contacting the doctor later on that week or the next week when we get a hold of them, and even make an appointment for that lady or that gentleman that's walked into our pharmacy. And they've got 4 weeks now to go and see their regular doctor for their checkup and a new script.
OK, so this is not you diagnosing someone at the cash register with a new illness. This is someone who has had a script, they've been stable on that medication for 12 months. It's only a one-off rollover, and I understand you're only seeking, if these current emergency powers become more permanent, you're only seeking the ability to roll over a script by 1 month in any 12-month period, so it can't be something they do frequently. If all of that's accurate, what's the complaint of the GPs and the AMA?
Well, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, Peter, so I won't delve into their opinions, but I can certainly attest to the fact that at the ground level, GPs love this because we're continuing the care of their patients. Instead of a patient taking no tablets for a weekend where they can't see the doctor, they're taking that particular tablet 3 times a day, 4 times a day, what the recommended dose is, and by Monday, because previously we were allowed to give 3 days supply, which just wasn't convenient for most patients. By the Monday, let's say, we pick up the phone and get on to the doctor, and they love the fact that we've given that particular patient a 4-week window now to end up getting an appointment with them again and looking after their medication, whether it's another checkup they might need or some other issue they might need to follow up on. So it works really well in practice. There's been no complaints, Peter. Both pharmacists and doctors.
I doubt there would be. I doubt there would be. And, when I worked in government, you were the one industry, pharmacies, where there was virtually universal consumer support, and we hardly ever got a complaint about pharmacies. In fact, people want more to be done in their pharmacies, I think, than less. Are you having this conversation with the government for these emergency powers to become more permanent, and how's that progressing?
It's progressing really well. Like I said, I applaud all the state and territory governments to start with because they had to get involved at the start of the year, and certainly the Morrison government through Minister Greg Hunt. Great progressive discussions happening right now because, you know, the reason why we're talking about it right now is that these so-called emergency powers are only up to the 30th of June. So we certainly need a decision pretty quick to make sure we can make them permanent, and we'd love the support of the public and, of course, all the governments.
Look, how far away, too, I've got to ask you, are you from a new agreement with the government? I know the Guild has its negotiations. The pharmacy agreement's a big deal around Canberra when it gets going. And there's always the usual push. I suspect it won't go away from the supermarkets to get their hands on your business. You're different than a pharmacy. A pharmacy is different than a supermarket because you've got to be a pharmacist, I suppose, to run it. You could be anyone running a supermarket. Where are you up to on the latest agreement?
Our latest agreement expires on the 30th of June also this year. So all this stuff's happening pretty much parallel. We're getting to the pointy end. So we're having a lot of constructive discussions with, again, the Minister of Health, Mr Greg Hunt. So we're almost there. We're at the pointy end. So these discussions, I've just spent a week in Canberra myself. I'm glad to be back home in Melbourne. But we're getting very close, Peter. So I'm very, very confident that we'll get it done way before the 30th of June.
Well, I grew up in a country town where it was hard to get to a doctor. There was only one doctor, and now that doctor's not there all the time. So I absolutely understand. Most of the time we went to the pharmacist before we ever got to be spending money at a doctor's clinic with, mum and 5 kids. So you have an open invitation to come on here and talk about the pharmacy issues anytime, particularly as you lead into that agreement. George Tambassis, thanks very much for your time tonight.
Thanks, Peter.